I'm happy to welcome here Corey Olson, who is a historian of cartography and professor of French at Stockton University at the United States. You are a professor of French language. French culture, not just literature, is one of the topics in which the Moravian Library specializes. We have the Milan Kundera Library here, which serves not only as an archive and exhibition hall to commemorate this writer's work, but also as an educational center and a vibrant Czech-French hub. Who is your favorite French writer, and which period of French history do you prefer?
Well, these are incredibly difficult questions to ask. It's like asking what's your favorite child. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to participate, to have this conversation. It's an incredible honor, and I'm looking at this room, and it's beautiful, it's stunning, and it reminds me of how important French culture, French literature is, not only in France, but in the United States, in Czech Republic as well. So if I had to choose my favorite French author, I probably would choose Émile Zola. No offense to Kundra here, but he is big on the Belle Époque and talking about Paris society, French society, at a time when art and culture was really flourishing in France, and he really captures the story of individuals in all aspects of society, from the Parisian shopkeeper to miners in northern France to ballet dancers, etc. And so he really captures France in a moment where it's full of transformation, and I feel that he does a great job showing the reader what life was like back then. And if I had to choose a favorite period of French history, I would probably say the same, from 1850 perhaps to World War One. In France, we have the Second Empire. So we have Napoleon III, and he brings in a gentleman named Haussmann, Baron Haussmann, and he's the one that makes Paris what we know today, the wide boulevards, the big parks, fountains, etc. And it really modernizes the city. And when people travel to France, when people travel to Paris, that's the image they have, and I think for that reason I really like that period. And then in the 1880s we get the Eiffel Tower, which arrives, which of course is very iconic, even though the Parisians hated it when it first arrived, and many people would eat at the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower because it was the only place in Paris where you did not see the Eiffel Tower. But the Belle Époque, we have changes, transformations in literature, transformations in art, the Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Picasso, etc. It highlights, it's a period when France and French culture are really at their best. And so I feel that, for me, is one of my most favorite periods of French history. And then Zola is part of that as well. And so perhaps one of the reasons I like Émile Zola as an author.
Okay, thank you for mentioning also the boulevards
Yes.
and the cityscape of Paris.
Yes.
I think we share interest in urban history, actually.
We do. We love cities.
We love cities, and you've published on Paris
Yes.
also.
Yes, so my first book is on the cartography of Third Republic Paris, and how the city publishes these maps, and how when we look at them, you see how they understand urban space. And so traditionally, cities in medieval times were very crowded, very dark, and very confusing. And with Haussmann, he creates these wide boulevards, and all of a sudden it's easy to cross urban space. And you have open space, open air, the idea that if you bring in fresh air, that it's healthy. If you give people access to green space and parks, that there'll be less disease. And so these maps kind of show how Paris, and I put that in quotation marks, is not always just the city, but Paris as we know it grows and becomes this larger urban space, this suburban space. And so today when you fly into Paris, for example, you're not just seeing the city, but you're seeing greater Paris, and that is, part of what happens in the Third Republic, that it grows and grows.
Yeah.
And
The aspect of modernization
Yes.
interconnected with all the phenomenons of transport revolution and things here in Central Europe are very discussed and also presented to today's students, because we have two models actually here.
Uh-huh.
The Paris model and Vienna.
Okay.
And they are different. Paris with its boulevards, and the same with the Ringstrasse, so
Okay.
the ring or two rings in Vienna, built exactly for the same reason when it comes to, let's say, well-being in a city. So hygiene and these aspects of
Absolutely.
modernity.
And modernity was progress. So
Yeah.
modernity is good. And you may have to tear down poor neighborhoods. You may have to push poor people out of the city. And for Paris, if you go to central Paris, there's many monuments, there's many museums. But before Osman, it was slums and poor neighborhoods. And so modernity is good, but there's downsides as it pushes working class people further out.
To kind of ghettos also.
Yes, very much so.
But you came to the Czech Republic for the Ichc, which stands for the International Conference on the History of Cartography. It is not possible to graduate in the history of cartography from a university worldwide.
Yes.
How was your way to our discipline?
Probably similar to many others. Yes, it's a shame that you cannot get a dissertation in the history of cartography because it's so fascinating. Growing up, I lived in a small town in the middle of the United States, and I always dreamed of travel. And where I lived, everything was far. Everything was far. I didn't see my first ocean until I was probably 18 years old. But we had a big atlas, and so I would open up the atlas, and on a Sunday afternoon when there's nothing to do, I would look at maps of Chicago, I would look at maps of New York City, I would look at maps of Europe, and I would be like, one day I'm going to go there. And so when I went to university, I wasn't sure if I wanted to geography or if I wanted to do French, and so I got two degrees. I got a degree in geography and a degree in French, and originally I wanted to do urban planning. I was going to go and get a master's in urban planning. I was going to build transportation systems. I was very excited, but my last year of university, I came to Europe. I went to Paris for the first time, and I fell in love. And I said, well, I probably should try French first, and I feel if I don't like French, it might be easier to go back to geography. So I did a master's in geography, and then when it came to do a PhD, I did my PhD at Penn State University. And there they let you do French, you can do literature or you can do civilization. And so I did civilization, and with civilization you can do French and history, French and business, French and law, French and political science, and I did French and geography. And by doing that, I learned about the history of cartography. I learned about cartographic discourse and how map makers, everyone assumes maps are neutral, but now we know that they're not, that there's a message. And I was fascinated, and I said, I need to learn more. And through my dissertation, I was able to look at maps of Paris and decide what did they want to show, what did they not want to show. And it really changed my way of thinking, and it gave me a lot of energy. I had studied literature in the past, and literature is great, but I didn't have a passion for literature. But doing French and geography gave me that passion, where I could go to my maps, which I loved since I was a kid, and I got to do French, which I loved later on as an adult. So now I get to go to Paris, and I get to go to the archives, and I get to look at old maps. So it's a win-win for me.
Yes, I like it. Do you have any favorite early map?
I do, and you had asked me that before, and I was trying to think, and so I was looking up, and there's one that I have the name here. and it's called La Carte de France Corrigée, so, or translated, it's the corrected map of France. And it was from 1682, and I don't have the picture here. But what it is, it's when triangulation first arrives in France. And so Louis XIV charged Philippe de la Hire, his main cartographer, engineer, to produce an accurate map of France. And on there, you can see the old way of mapping France and the new way. And the new way, it's accurate, but it's actually smaller. And Louis XIV, he saw this and he said, oh gosh, he's like, I feel that I've lost more land from my engineers and my geographers than I've lost in battles. And it's kind of a fascinating look at how technology and reality are important to know what space looks like. So that's probably my favorite early map.
Back to your research topics, you also focus on guidebooks,
Yes.
don't you?
In my dissertation, one part of my dissertation was state maps, which was my first book, and the other part was guidebooks, because I wanted to see if what state maps show about the Paris cityscape and what guidebooks show. And it's interesting because obviously guidebooks are meant to guide visitors to the city, and so they highlight many of the same things, such as the wide boulevards. And so with guides, you could arrive at a train station in Paris and you're almost forced through the guide to take a wide boulevard because everything else is empty. So suggesting there's nothing important here, but this wide boulevard, it's white, it's very prominently marked. So how do guides prioritize sites? How do guides prioritize, parks and gardens and everything? So that was the other part of my dissertation. And I always enjoyed traveling and travel guides as well. So
Which period are we talking about?
So it's still the Third Republic. So it's when the bourgeois in France, and I assume England and Germany, they had the means to travel, they had time to travel, because in the Belle Époque, the bourgeoisie made more money and they had more free time, and they had ability to take the train from Paris to Brussels, or from Brussels to Paris, or Lyon to Paris, or Brittany to Paris, and then they would go to the hotels, they would go to the sites. Plus, Paris hosts many World's Fairs. The Exhibition Universelle, they have one in 1869, they have one in 1878, they have one in 1889, they have one in 1900. So they have a lot of these fairs, a lot of visitors are coming, and so the guidebooks have to show Paris in a way that's easy to cross, easy to maneuver. And so that's part of my dissertation was as well.
Okay. Were you interested also about images or photos in this era?
I did not, mainly because most of the images were sketched. There's not a lot of photographs in guidebooks from 1867 or even 1889. Those come a little bit later just because it's more expensive, and even the maps are often inserts into the guide. So I didn't really examine many of the sketches. Of course, I looked at them and found them very interesting, but for the dissertation, I didn't have time to really explore many of those images.
Yeah, you preferred examining strategies and
yes.
Yeah.
Very much
that's
so.
a nice approach.
Yes, definitely.
Any new projects?
Yes, I do. So continuing on with guidebooks, I am currently working on Michelin maps of Africa. So my first book, as I mentioned, was Paris. And for my second book, I want to do something very, very different. And so I came across this guide, this Michelin guide for Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. And it's from 1929, which is the 100-year anniversary of the French arrival in North Africa. And the goal was to get French people to come and visit. And so the guidebooks Michelin had some guidebooks from the early 20th century, but their paper maps don't start until the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And so I take a look at how Michelin, this private French company, shows the African space. So if you look at these maps, initially you can say, yes, I can cross the Sahara, it's very easy. I can cross the jungle, it's very easy. But if you scratch the surface, if you start looking a bit, it's like, no, this road is only certain months of the year, or there's no petrol stations for 400 kilometers, so you have to pack extra supplies.
Or no water.
Or no water, or it's salty water, or it's not good water, so you have to bring your own. So it's interesting to see how they encourage people to come to Africa and show it as a French space, but in reality that's not the case. If you're in the Sahara in 1958, it's not French, it's the desert. Or even in the Congo in 1960, they make it look very French, but in reality it's not. And so how do they present this exotic space? How do they encourage people to come and perhaps drive the African continent?
When do you expect the book to be completed?
Oh, well, that's the magic question, isn't it? I have all the revisions back. I received it right before leaving for Europe, so I haven't looked at them yet. So hoping by the next Ichc we will have a physical copy, maybe even a little bit earlier. So
great, I'm really looking forward.
Thank you. I'll make sure you hear about it.
We are talking here in Brno in
Yes.
July 2026,
Yes.
as said, on the occasion of International Conference on the History of Cartography. But this is not the only occasion when historians of cartography
Yes.
meet. Can you tell us more, as one of the representatives, about the other platform?
Yes, so I am Secretary and Vice Chair of Ichc, which is the International Society for the History of the Map. And it's a professional organization. We really welcome scholars of all levels, especially younger scholars. We have a symposium on the opposite years. So in 2026, we have International Conference on the History of Cartography. In 2027, we'll have our Ichc Symposium, and we're having it in Barcelona. And what we do is we have 2 days of workshops, which is great for early career and doctoral students. And we cover topics on map collections and digital maps and specialty maps. And they're sometimes specific topics, but we try to create them so it affects, or it applies to anyone who's working on, like last time I did colonial cartography, and it was focused on French colonial cartography because we were in Paris, but it's something where you could use those texts for Spanish colonial cartography or Portuguese colonial cartography, etc. And then we have a 2-day symposium, which is similar to the ICHC, not quite as long, but and it tends to be a bit of a smaller gathering, but that allows it to be a bit more intimate and a bit more interactive sometimes. ICAC is great because we meet so many people, but sometimes it's hard to meet everyone and go to all the panels. Where Ichc, it's a little bit easier to do that. So it's another organization. We're very welcoming, a great group of people who are here to help anyone interested in learning about maps, studying maps, teaching with maps. And it's been fun being part of it and watching it grow. And I hope that we continue to do so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate having the chance to talk about me and talk about Ichc and everything. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.